We all have those movies that help shape our childhood. For me, few come close to having the same impact as the original Ghostbusters.
Growing up when I did, I can tell you that for a while, Ghostbusters was everywhere. Toys, TV shows, goddamn breakfast cereal. And it's easily my first big fandom. Yeah, of course I love the Ninja Turtles, but for my money, Ray, Egon, Peter, and Winston were tops.
I even have my old toy proton pack with all the accessories. See, I got the trap, and I got the PKE meter. God, I was such a dork back then.
But when I was a kid, we never really got a good video game. While I personally don't hate the one for NES, it's objectively pretty awful. And the less said about the Ghostbusters 2 game, the better. The Ghostbusters game for Genesis was a big improvement, but it had next to nothing to do with the movie.
I mean, what's this guy? You're just making stuff up now.
But then in 2007, seemingly out of nowhere, it was announced that a new Ghostbusters game was in development. But this wasn't just any Ghostbusters game. It was set to be written in part by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis and starring the original cast, with some notable exceptions. It was a canonical follow-up to Ghostbusters 2.
So, after all this time, I'd actually be able to hear the cast reprise their roles and experience playing as a Ghostbuster on what would have then been the current generation hardware. As a kid, this would have been my dream game. So this year, I'm going to take a look at Ghostbusters the video game for PlayStation 3 and Nintendo Wii.
While the game is originally set to be published by Sierra, after Vivendi, their parent company, merged with Activision, Atari took over as Big Daddy publisher. The developer on the PS3, 360, and PC versions was none other than the now-defunct Terminal Reality. Old people like yours truly will probably remember them as the guys what made Terminal Velocity and its pseudo-sequel Fury 3.
Or is that Fury 3rd? Fury Cubed?
Well, however the hell you're supposed to pronounce it, it was a futuristic flyy shooty game for Windows 95. They also made Blood Rain, Kinect Star Wars, and The Walking Dead Survival. You know what? They made this thing. The game begins with...
Oh, sorry, used to have a sticker on it. No. Nope. No. I want to grow up just like you, Papa. Shut up.
No.
Jesus.
The game begins with an updated version of the classic Ghostbusters TV commercial from the movie, and we pull out to see that we're actually in the security office of a museum. The guard sees a spooky and then radios for his buddy to tell him to watch out. It turns out that some genius decided to set up a Gozer exhibit, because cursed artifacts who are connected to an evil god who actually tried to end the world less than 10 years ago should be on display in a public place. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Yeah, that's about right. Cue the title screen, complete with Ray Parker Jr.'s I Want a New the Ghostbusters theme. We then cut to our boys at the firehouse getting to know their new mute trainee. It's his job, or our job, to test out all the new dangerous experimental equipment. But before they can get him up to speed, they too experience a massive energy pulse, and to top it off, Slimer escapes. They give chase and end up back at the Sedgwick Hotel because... fan service. While entering the elevator, they make a point of showing Venkman unsuccessfully hitting on a woman in a cutscene that kinda comes out of nowhere. They fight off all the various ghoulies in the hotel, only to be greeted by the puffy, delicious face of Stay Puft Gozer Marshmallow Man himself. He's back in the flesh. Tasty, tasty flesh.
Excuse me, fellas, Daddy needs his medicine.
They head towards the rampaging confection and manage to enter a building that he's paying an awful lot of attention to. While inside, they meet a young lady who is coincidentally the same one who had spurned Venkman's advances earlier at the hotel. Hello, I will be your Dana for this evening. And after a hard-fought battle, they once again manage to put down the sugary scoundrel. As it turns out, the woman they rescued is Dr. Elisa Selwyn, voiced by Alyssa Milano, who just so happens to be an expert on Ivo Shandor.
The architect's name was Ivo Shandor. He was also a doctor, performed a lot of unnecessary surgery, and then in 1920 he started a secret society.
Let me guess. Gozer worshippers.
Right.
Gozerian mythology and the curator of the Gozer exhibit. Afterward, the boys return to the firehouse only to be greeted by Walter Peck, who honestly looks pretty good for a guy who was showered with molten marshmallow napalm at the end of the first movie, as well as the new mayor of New York, played by the always awesome Brian Doyle Murray. Although I can't really listen to him here without wanting to clear my throat.
The expert Peck recommended is attacked the night before the opening.
The boys are informed by both men that due to the property damage left in their wake, the mayor has created a new oversight commission exclusively for them. Oh, come on now, that's silly. And that it's set to be headed by none other than Captain Dickless himself. The story takes our boys through various series locations and through fan-servicey set pieces, such as the New York Public Library, complete with Ghost Librarian, the History Museum, and a ghostly island once owned by Ivo Shandor, where it's revealed that Elisa is his direct descendant. The final stage takes place in a heavily upset Central Park. It turns out that the spirit of Shandor has been possessing the mayor all along, and he was just using Peck to keep everybody distracted. Which is actually not a bad strategy, because Peck is a complete asshole.
Can we blast him just once really hard? Nobody's gonna know.
And of course he needed a blood relative because, you know, rituals and all that. And you might assume that this is all yet another attempt to suck up to his favorite evil deity. But in a twist, he's tired of Gozer failing him, so he's upgraded his scheme to becoming a big bad god himself. Sorry. He does a Lucifer, they zap his ass, and all's well that ends well. The only thing left to do is to rescue Alyssa, Peck, and the newly unpossessed mayor, and roll credits. The story here works fairly well as what is essentially Ghostbusters 3. Since it was penned by the original creators, it absolutely knows the series lore, which it expands upon with varying degrees of success. The writing isn't bad, even if many of the jokes fall kinda flat. I may have only laughed once in a while, but the humor and interactions did make me smile more often than not. And while I wouldn't say that it's a major complaint, I wish that they hadn't relied so heavily on fan service in some areas, and just kind of allowed the game to develop an identity of its own. But with this sort of a project, it was kind of inevitable. And while I was initially disappointed that you're playing as a nameless intern rather than one of the Ghostbusters proper, I'd say in the end it works more heavily in the game's favor. This way you can be a Ghostbuster while simultaneously remaining a fly on the wall, which allows the cast to interact and play off one another more effectively. As for the gameplay, you're a Ghostbuster.
Bustin' makes you feel good.
The game goes with that third-person over-the-shoulder camera that was so popular at the time. Your equipment consists of series staples such as traps, your proton pack, PKE meter, and even the slime blower.
Ugh, disgusting.
But you also have a few new toys at your disposal. There are the boson darts for those really pesky spooks, the dark matter generator which can deploy a stasis beam and a shotgun-like blast of energy, a slime tether attachment for the slime blower which will allow you to play with the physics and solve some minor puzzles, and the Meson Collider which selects a target and fires shots that automatically home in on it for you. The primary ghost-busting action of course uses the iconic proton streams. First, you have to weaken a ghost by hitting him with the beam until his health wheel thingy depletes, remembering to periodically vent your pack so that it doesn't overheat. Then you can use a capture stream and smack the stubborn specter into walls to calm him down. All that's left to do then is to throw out a trap and coax the persistent poltergeist to get in the box. But the game doesn't just stop at free-roaming vapors. Oh no. You got ghosts that create corporeal forms from masses of books, ghosts that possess the living, gargoyles that come to life, just to name a few. And there are different strategies for fighting each of them. Capturing or obliterating ghosts and finding hidden collectibles earns you cash, which then can be spent on upgrades for your equipment. And that's really cool. At first. You see, the problem is that there really aren't that many things to buy. I bought all the upgrades pretty early, and from then on I was earning money with nothing to spend it on, which sucks. The world of Ghostbusters the video game is heavily destructible. They even tally up the total cost of damage you do, but unexpectedly you aren't really penalized for any of it. Based on some shaky logic regarding insurance, you are free to wreck shit to your heart's content. No, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it does favor fun over the in-game logic, which I can absolutely appreciate. Gaming rule number 1. Fun comes first. Even for a game that's going on 10 years old, some of these graphics haven't aged particularly well. I mean, it definitely has its moments, but it's the people. The characters are modeled after their real-world counterparts circa 1991, but the facial animation technology isn't quite up to the task of bringing them to life.
We are deep in the uncanny valley, my friends.
The lip syncing is off, the motion capture, if there even was any, is stilted and robotic, and everyone just looks horribly dated. Different kind of dated. And it's unfortunate that, at least on the PS3, it suffers from an extra chunky frame rate when things get hectic. And believe it or not, the voice acting is kind of a mixed bag. All 4 Ghostbusters are back, along with Annie Potts as Janine Melnitz, William Atherton as Walter Peck. They even got Max von Sydow to reprise his role as Vigo.
He's Vigo!
I am Vigo the Destroyer.
Why are my drippings with goo?
But even with all those big names, you can tell that screen acting does not always translate to voice acting. Egon is incredibly low energy, at least at first. And what the hell is up with Venkman in this game?
Thanks to me and my new exclusively assigned recruit here, the festivities can now proceed in an entirely ghost-free environment. So, you're welcome? Huh?
But like I mentioned earlier, there was an alternate version released for the Nintendo Wii.
This one was developed by Redfly Studio, who did those Mushroom Men games way back when. And while it more or less tells the same story as its advanced big brother, some things had to be changed. First, the look of the game has been completely revamped to account for the Wii's technical shortcomings. The characters are given a more cartoony design that seems to be— Whoa!
What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
The levels have also been simplified this time around. Yeah, you still go to the Sedgwick, but the layout is completely different, for example. They're also split into sections, presumably to conserve the Wii's limited system memory. We're also treated to exclusive boss battles that never existed in any other version, like this Ghost Chef complete with brand new dialogue. And as expected, the game makes heavy use of pointy Wiimote motion controls, although here it does make a lot more sense than in most other applications. But unfortunately, this does become tedious in some of the late game sequences. But one addition that I really do dig is the option to play as either a male or a female Ghostbuster.
This game did it first.
Now, sadly, when I originally wrote this review, I was going to mention how the vastly superior PC version was still available for purchase on Steam. You get superior frame rates, you have your choice between gamepad or your mouse and keyboard controls. It's a win-win. But this is no longer the case.
Boo! Boo!
But there still are some listings for it on Amazon. For now.
At the end of the day, Ghostbusters the video game is one of the best licensed games that I've ever played. I mean, this is the closest thing we'll probably ever get to a Ghostbusters 3, especially considering the tragic passing of Harold Ramis in 2014. So, I'd say that regardless of which version you play, it's worth it for any gamer who's ever dreamed of donning a proton pack and going out to bust some heads. In a spiritual sense, of course. See you next time.
Would you like to attempt to do one where there is not a cat dingling in the background?
Yes! Yes, that would be great!
Oh, cat in the frame.
Cat in the frame. Cat in the...
Cat butt in the frame.
Would you like to meet my cat? This is going in the video, you know.